that you know I'm coming next week.
Yeah, yeah,
But, yeah, it was sort of like, hey, I wasn't sure
yeah.
how it works. So.
I haven't noticed you doing anything wrong, like with clicking buttons. Yeah. We'll go with that. Yeah. Victor's good. Are you ready to get started?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, can everyone hear me? Great. My name's Jessica Adamczyk, and I am the Secretary of Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance, and I'm so thrilled all of you are here today. And I want to give a special shout out to all of those who are watching on YouTube Live. We stream these programs and we make them available on demand on our YouTube channel, Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance. You can just find us on YouTube there. So if you ever miss a program or want to see it again and share it with folks, that's your best resource. So typically, my colleague Juliet Berger does these announcements. Juliet is our president. She is, as a fearless leader, she is taking a WBNA troop down to Costa Rica right now. So we wish them all the warmth and all the birds. So I'd like to read our DEI statement, just to make sure everyone is aware of our commitments, and let me go with that. The Birds Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance pledges to protect. They differ in color, size, behavior, geographical preference, and countless other ways. As we honor and celebrate the equally remarkable diversity of the human species, Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance considers the work of inclusion, diversity, and equity a top priority. We hope that in doing so, we can bring new creativity and energy to our work in Washtenaw County and beyond, for birds and people alike. So thank you. I'd love to open up the floor to see if anyone has any special bird sightings they'd like to talk about. If you say something, I'll repeat it for the folks on Zoom. I've heard about some short-eared owls. Anyone want to speak about the short-eared owls?
Yeah, we saw short-eared owls at Conservancy Farm on Vreeland on Thursday. Yeah.
Short-eared owls on Vreeland at Conservancy Farm.
Yep.
Just
At
such
dusk.
a magical space. Yeah.
It is.
And they've short-eared owls been putting on a show at Godfredson and Vreeland Road.
This is
every night. Also, I was there on Thursday and sophomore.
4 of them out on Vreeland Road, Vreeland and Godfredson, that intersection.
Yeah.
It is the show. It is the thing to be doing in January. Was there something else though?
Today on our shepherd's book for the bird feeders and suicide, there was a sharp-shinned hawk sitting there, and there wasn't a bird in sight.
What? Just holding court, right? The sharp-shinned hawk on the feeder today. That's a special bird. Normally we get the Cooper's hawks, but sharp-shinned, I think, are quite rare for the area. So, any others that folks would like to mention? Tim.
It's perfectly ordinary, but I was riding my bike over here this evening, watching the crows settle into the west side
I
in
saw
the
that
sunset,
too.
and it was a particularly magnificent swirl.
Yeah, we have the.
Around my house last night.
Yeah.
I'm sure they moved later on, but just this time.
For those on the YouTube, we have the crow roost, and it seems like there's been a really wonderful swirl of them right here in downtown. And yeah, for those who get to see it, it's a pretty jaw-dropping, stop your car right in the middle of the intersection kind of experience. So I love the crows because they're a great way to get new birders into the hobby. You stop and say, what is that? Let's see. I'd love to make some field trip announcements and upcoming program announcements. All of the events that we have are available on our Facebook page and then also on our website, washtenaw.bna.org. You do not need to be a member to attend the vast majority of our events. You do not need to pay for any attendance at our events, so please just check our website out and come. Everyone is welcome. So a couple that are coming up. We own a nature preserve on the south side of, I think it's Augusta Township, closer to Saline. Searles Nature Preserve, and we have a work day coming up, Sunday, January 26th. If you want to get out and make a difference, that's a wonderfully diverse habitat, and it's a place where we're very, very proud to be the owners and the stewards of. Victor Chen, who is our education chair, who's live streaming for us. Hi, Victor. He's leading a BIPOC bird walk on Saturday, February 15. And let's see, here at the library, 1 month from now, February 19th, our treasurer of our board, Keith Dickey, is going to be leading a panel discussion. I'm so excited about this. It's called Birds in Focus, a panel discussion on how to take great photos in the field. So Keith will have a panel of accomplished local nature photographers, and they will all be sharing their tips and tricks for taking successful photos of birds and wildlife. So February 19th, 6 p.m. right here, the most beautiful screen in the whole of the city, best place to see bird photography. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michael Kielb, our guest speaker for tonight. So Michael is going to be speaking about spring warbler migration in the Arb. And Michael has spent many years documenting the migration of warblers in the University of Michigan's Nichols Arboretum. As we all know, it is one of the best birding sites in Washtenaw County. Michael is an avid naturalist and a retired biology faculty member from Eastern Michigan University, and he's the lead author of the Birds of Washtenaw County. That was published by the University of Michigan Press. So please join me in welcoming Michael to the stage. We're in for a treat tonight.
Thanks, Jessica. All right. So I'm going to just hold this because I'm liable to walk a little bit. When I first got to Ann Arbor, I was in the anatomy department at the medical school, and I needed a place for a break. And I found that I could easily walk from the anatomy department down to the Arb at lunchtime and spend a little bit of time in the Arb. And then I realized, oh, I could go there before I have to be in my lab. And over the years, I spent a lot of time in the Arb. And then in the late 1990s, I was hired by the Arb. I became part of the staff and was responsible for volunteers. But then my responsibilities at Eastern Michigan became too much, and I just gave that up, and I was at the Eastern for till 2019 when I got to retire, 4 months before the pandemic started. So that was a real treat. And anyway, Nichols Arboretum. So I started doing daily walks in the morning, keeping track of birds there. And a lot of people over the time came with me, and it was always fun. I started doing this back in the day when you could drive into the Arb in the morning along the from the hospital parking lot, come in and park where all the roads come and meet down at the river. So that's how long I've been doing it, which is way too long. And I managed to start in 1979 keeping daily tallies, and then did that through 2009. So I actually have the data all the way to 2009. But this was what I could easily get a hold of. So 1910, that was way before any of us were around. But that was the first paper that mentioned the birds of Schoolgirls Glen. Schoolgirls Glen is a very important spot in the Arb. We'll go there again. And the glen itself is over here. Oh, wait a minute. I'm trying to do two things here. The glen is up there. And it's a really nice spot. There's a little waterway that comes down the glen, goes under a little bridge into the river. And it was about, maybe 20 years ago that they cleaned it up so that you can actually walk up the glen and get all the way up to the peony garden. Back when I was doing it through the 1990s, you had to bushwhack, and that was not an easy thing to do. So over the years, I spent a lot of time with these walks. And I would average 4 in late April and 19 in May. And you go, well, that's not that many. Well, late April in Ann Arbor back in the 70s and 80s was often snowy, and there were no birds to be seen. And then the snow would be replaced by rain, and early May could go either way, and then by the time you got to late May, it was actually hot, and most of the birds were gone. So getting in 19 censuses in May and 4 in April was actually pretty decent. In the course of the 17 years, I managed to tally about 1,000 birds in April and 15,000 in May, so for a total of 16,000 warbler sightings, which is actually, a pretty good number. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we're going to look at the birds. So we'll be looking at most of these birds, and we're going to talk about best times to see them and the best places to look for them, because not all birds are everywhere. So blue-winged warbler. Blue-winged warbler is that? No. Blue-winged warbler is just a delightful migrant. It's a fairly loud singer, if you can hear those frequencies, and over time, my hearing is back in the 1990s. Okay, it's there somewhere, but I'm about to correct that. And so the best places would be where the trails come down to the river and at Dow Field. There's openings there, there are tall trees where the blue wings like to sing. Earliest observation, 17th of April, latest 30th of May. Now the midpoint in migration, if 100 birds were to migrate through, the midpoint was the day that number 50 appeared. So for the blue wing, that would be the 3rd of May. But the peak in migration was when you're more likely to see a greater number. So instead of 1 blue wing, you might see 5. And that would be the 30th of April. So I would say, if you want to see a blue-winged warbler in Nichols Arboretum, go between the 29th of April and the 5th of May. And that's when you're most likely to see one. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Golden-winged warbler. Most of these photos I took, or my friend Don Chalfant took. Midpoint in migration, 10th of May, the peak, the 11th. Both of those are a lot later than the blue-winged warbler. Now we have a problem. Blue-winged warbler and golden-winged warbler hybridize. And the blue-winged warbler has completely replaced the golden-winged warbler in most of the lower peninsula. When I first got to Ann Arbor back in the 1970s, there were still golden-winged warblers nesting in Washtenaw County. Today, I don't know where in the lower peninsula to go anymore for nesting golden-winged warblers. We have several spots in the upper peninsula where we find them, but not in the lower. And that's because they show up later, and golden wings like a habitat that's a little bit wetter than the blue wings, but the blue wings will take the wet habitat and they'll take dry habitat. So you're more likely to find blue wings. And now, when we do find something that resembles a golden wing, it's usually a hybrid. Susan, my wife, and I banded a hybrid nest where the female was a golden wing and the male was a Brewster's warbler that she had banded 3 years earlier, a couple hundred meters away from where this nest was. What was that?
400 meters.
400 meters. That's a couple hundred. So, yeah. Tennessee warbler. Midpoint, 21st of May. Oh my goodness, that's late. Peak, 23rd of May. This is one of the infamous spruce bud warblers. And they come through fairly late. They go very far north. They nest in scattered numbers in the Upper Peninsula. And you can find them all through the middle of the Arboretum. When they're there, and you can hear them, there'll be hundreds in the treetops. I've had days literally where there would be 75, 100 birds. Orange crown warbler. This is a warbler that everybody wants to see. It's hard to find. And the reason it's hard to find isn't because they're rare, it's because there aren't a lot of them, and they tend to be there in small numbers very early in the season. A lot of people really don't go out looking for warblers in April and early May. These peak by the 5th of May, and the midpoint is the 3rd of May. So if you're going out like the 8th or 10th of May or the 15th of May, which is typically a great day to go see warblers, you're going to miss orange crown. Nashville. Nashville is an abundant warbler, and I do mean abundant. They nest from the southern part of the state all through every county in Michigan. And large numbers, they show up early, they're here late, they peak around the 11th of May, so that if you're out, let's say you only have 2 or 3 days really to spend a lot of time looking at birds, you're going to pick the 15th, 16th, 17th of May to go out, and you're going to see a lot of warblers. And Nashville's are going to be there. Northern parula. This is a favorite of many people. Parulas are bright. They're fairly loud. They nest in the northern half of the lower peninsula and all through the upper peninsula. They nest they weave lichen together to make a little purse nest that hangs. And we have a cabin near Whitefish Point, and we can walk from our cabin and find nesting parulas. Midpoint 10th of May, peak 12th of May, and so they're once again here right during the big period of migration. Yellow warblers, I don't know. It's funny. When you start watching birds, yellow warblers get you excited. And then I spent so many years camping at Point Pelee in Ontario, where I could go out and see 600 yellow warblers a day. And it's like, oh God, it's another yellow warbler. And it's like, oh no, they're a nice bird. They're nice. They have a nice song. They're not hard to find. Their nests are pretty easy to find. And peak migration around the 4th of May, midpoint around the 10th. The problem in the Arb is that by midpoint in the 15th of May, they're starting to nest. And if they're nesting, it's hard to figure out who's migrating and who's nesting. So usually, at that point, I would have some number of birds that were just resident in the Arb, and I would ignore those. So there'd be very few. Chestnut-sided warbler the songs are very disturbingly similar to yellow warblers, and they can be easily confused. They look quite different. You find them in the same habitat. They tend to arrive a little bit later and peak a little bit later. And they nest in Washtenaw County. They nest through much of Michigan. So we have them pretty much all over the lower peninsula and the upper peninsula. Magnolia warbler is one of those pretty gaudy warblers. It's nice. It is loud, which helps us older people. And it's a mid-late migrant. Peak migration is around the 14th of May. The midpoint is around the 16th of May. And once again, you can have days with 30, 40, 50 of them in the Arb or more. So it's quite delightful. This is probably one of my favorite warblers. I have photographed so many of these, and every year I go, oh, I don't need any more. Oh, look, a Cape May. Boom. It's like, just distract me. You know, it's like a dog and a squirrel. How many squirrels has the dog chased? How many has it caught? 0. Oh, look, a squirrel. And it goes after it. Same thing. They can be very early. So they can be there the 21st of April and fairly late in May. Midpoint the 13th of May, the peak the 11th. This is another one of those warblers that you would expect in large numbers in the middle of May. When it's another one of the spruce budworm warblers. So when I talk about spruce budworm warblers, those are birds that have a population explosion when spruce budworm, which is a moth caterpillar, it has very large populations. And in the Upper Peninsula and into Canada, you have these amazing huge spruce forests, spruce bogs. And in them, you'll have, maybe every 4 or 5 years, an explosion of spruce budworm. So when the spruce budworm is high, spruce budworm warblers like the Cape May, the Tennessee, the bay-breasted, raise a lot of kids so that the next year or the next 2 years, you see a lot of them. And then after that, their numbers go down. We've had days, in the Arb, the most I've had in a day is 24. Now, that's a pretty amazing number. We've had days at Point Pelee where we've had 80 and 90, where you would look at it. They don't have a lot of spruce trees there, but they do like to stop at spruce trees. And you'll come to a spruce tree, and there'll be 6 or 8 of them in one tree. And it's like, it's a Christmas tree. Black-throated blue is another nice northern warbler. They nest in big deciduous, mixed deciduous forests, usually where there's a blowdown, and so there'll be a little opening. And they come through, they peak around the 12th, midpoint the 11th. So once again, if you're out during the peak in migration, you should find black-throated blue. They're a very nice warbler, and I like them, especially when they sit down and yell at you. Yellow rump warbler. Another warbler that people get tired of. Early in the season, yellow rump warblers dominate, and I do mean dominate. 16th of April. Okay, 16th of April is early for a migrant warbler, but these guys can be here on Christmas bird counts. I would say most Christmas bird counts have 1 or 2 down in this part of Michigan. So, and they peak in midpoint 5th of May. I've had days in the Arb with several hundred yellow rumps. And I've also, so I learned the yellow rump warbler as the myrtle warbler. That's what this type is. Out west, the yellow rump warbler is Audubon's warbler, and it has a yellow throat. So it's just like the eastern bird, but it has a yellow throat. And there is at least 1 or 2 records of Audubon's warbler in the Arboretum. Black-throated green, another warbler with an easy song to learn and it's fairly easy to identify. Peaks around the 10th of May, midpoint the 9th of May, so it's a fairly early migrant, but once again, that midpoint, around the 15th of May, you'll see them. And they're not rare, they're fairly common. Ah, Blackburnian warbler, yes. This is a crazy pretty bird, and they're an abundant nesting bird in the Upper Peninsula. They're really quite common if you take the time to look for them and learn their songs. Midpoint the 5th of May, peak the 11th of May. So late in May, they're pretty unusual. A few trickle through late in May. Usually, when there are birds coming through late in May, they're females and they're not as brightly colored as the males. It's just the way it is. Pine warbler. What to say about pine warbler? Long time ago, by a long time I mean the 1970s, pine warblers were pretty uncommon. We didn't find many. And then we found their nesting at Stinchfield Woods. And I'm looking at the habitat. Well, Stinchfield Woods is pretty much all pines, so that makes it easy. If you've never gone birding at Stinchfield Woods, I highly recommend it. In the summer, I think Mary Wise is still doing the Stinchfield bird count, and usually that's early in June.
Yeah, early June.
Early June. And so you'll get pine warbler, black-throated green, lots of ovenbirds, blue-headed vireo, hooded warbler. So a lot of Acadian flycatcher and willow flycatcher, and maybe even alder. So you get a lot of bird diversity there that you don't get other places. But in the Arboretum, there's a big patch of pines, and that's a really good place to look for them. And then down at Dow Field, there's a small patch of pines, which is, once again, another good place to find them. So you can find them in both. It's not an abundant migrant. They occur early. So 22nd of April is their peak in migration. That's early. Palm warbler. Palm warbler is special for us because Susan had a project in the Upper Peninsula where she was recording palm warblers and color banding them and looking at the differences in their song, because they don't sing one song, they have several different songs, and it's really complicated and kind of crazy fun. That's kind of fun we do. But oh yes, this is a banded bird. So I photographed this bird in the Upper Peninsula. It's one of hers. Midpoint 5th of May, peak 5th of May, early migrant, and they have two different habitats that they use. One is spruce bogs. Okay, who doesn't like a good spruce bog? You know, you get up to here and muck, and you don't go anywhere fast. And but they also nest in jack pines, and they use the same habitat as Kirtland's warblers. So when you go up towards Mayo, or looking for Kirtland's warblers, you should be aware these guys are there as well. So, and last year we had a couple great days at Mayo, looking for Kirtland's warblers. We have a spot we go to. Bunch of Kirtland's warblers, Brewer's blackbirds, upland sandpipers, nighthawks, clay-colored sparrow, just all these birds that are tough to see. And they can be anywhere in the Arb. It's like, I don't care. It's a tree. I can sit there and sing. It's got caterpillars. Good. I'm happy. So, caterpillars. Susan and I have been doing moth nights for the Washtenaw group for the last couple of years. We we spend more time now with moths than we probably do with birds. And it's a lot of fun. We probably, in the course of the summer, so June, July, August, September, October, let's say 5 months, we'll have 5 nights where we set up at various parks in and around Ann Arbor and set up sheets, and we have other structures for moths. We'll get 40 people out to look at moths. And we talk about the fact that without moths, there are no warblers. Typical warbler, well, so Matt Spohr talks about the typical chickadee nest. Typical chickadee nest has maybe 5 kids, 2 adults, 9,000 caterpillars. All right, so you just think about that. 9,000 caterpillars to feed that chickadee nest, and there are 1,000 more around.
Sometimes they nest twice.
And sometimes they nest twice. So, yeah, moths, you gotta love them. Bay-breasted warbler. Bay-breasted is another one of the spruce budworm warblers. This happens to be a female, and midpoint the 17th, peak the 18th. It's a fairly late migrant. So if you go out 15th and 16th, you're seeing kind of the beginning of the going towards the peak. There are years when there'll be 50, 60 a day in the Arb, and there'll be other years where there are 1 or 2, 3 because of that up and down shift in the spruce budworm. Blackpoll, yet another spruce budworm warbler. Blackpoll is it's a tough bird for most people. Number one, it looks a lot like a black and white warbler, but if you see it from underneath, the soles of the feet are yellow. Sure. How many of you have ever looked at the soles of the foot? It has no streaking in the mid-breast, and the head pattern is really different. The song. All of my friends, I used to go bird watching, I still do, but not up here. And first bird they could no longer hear, Blackpoll warbler. It has a very loud song, but has a very high frequency, and that's usually the first frequency people lose. It was crazy for me. I would go out, and these guys were screaming. And then one year, they weren't screaming. And the next year, where are they? That's hearing. So, they're a very late migrant, too. So if you're one of the people that kind of gives up going out looking for warblers around the 20th of May, you're not going to see them. Cerulean warbler. This is a southern warbler. It nests in and around Washtenaw County. It's a threatened species. Best place for this is Embry Road in the northwest part of the county. You tend to hear them high in the, or see them high in the trees along the river. They like wet areas. And yeah, they can be early. It's pretty unusual. More likely they're towards the middle of migration. Now this is a real black and white, and that's hackberry, northern hackberry. So common early migrant. This is usually one of the first migrant warblers that shows up, and it can actually be in fairly large numbers. It can be anywhere in the Arb. They tend to come. Well, this one's pointing down, but they tend to go up the tree. Another really cool bird, redstarts. Redstarts are abundant. They nest everywhere, every county in Michigan. And this is a male. The females, the reds are replaced with yellows. And first-year males, that red is a more salmon colored, so you can actually tell if it's a male, a female, or a first-year male. They can be anywhere. They tend to be a late migrant, so they peak around the 19th of May. Worm-eating warbler, oh my goodness. Most people have never even seen a worm-eating warbler, don't even know they occur here. Well, they do. The first worm-eating warbler I photographed in the Arb was probably 1980. And over the years, I've had about 20 or 22 in the Arb. So they're there. They tend to be disturbingly early. You're more like, they peak and they at the midpoint 4th or 5th of May. This is a warbler that if you want to see, you should be going to the warbler hotspot and that area kind of where the trails are going away from the river. They're headed up towards Gettys. And it's a good place to go look for them. You tend to find them low on the ground, but when they're singing, which sounds a lot like a chipping sparrow or a pine warbler, they'll be high in the trees. There was one bird in the Arb that was there for about almost 3 weeks singing, and it was on territory. It's like, I really want to nest here, but there are no females, and so it gave up. Only place I know that they nest in Michigan is Allegan County on the west side of the state. Ovenbirds. I don't know. Everybody likes ovenbirds. They're kind of a fun bird. They're skulky. They're on the ground usually. They're a mid-season. They peak in the middle of migration, even though they can be here early and they can be here quite late. But they nest in most counties in Michigan, if not every county. Susan Rosegrant. Is that who? Yeah, Susan Rosegrant had one in her yard late December and early January.
Yeah, it was Susan.
Yeah, so that's kind of neat. Northern water thrush. 10th of May. So it's a relatively early migrant, but they're around. You're more likely to find them skulking in wet areas along the river. They definitely like wet. They nest in the county as well. And Louisiana water thrush. Louisiana water thrush peaks the 28th of April. You want to see Louisiana water thrush? You better be out there in late April looking at birds. So usually in March, we're in Florida, and lately we've been going over to Dauphin Island, Alabama for late March, and we'll have days where all we see, Louisiana water thrush, hooded warbler, worm-eating warbler, pine warbler, and it's like, okay, we need something else. Oh, we're happy. Connecticut warbler. This is everybody's holy grail bird. This is a hard one to find. Peak 25th of May, midpoint 24th of May. If you're not out in late May and probably fighting mosquitoes, you're not going to see this bird. We've had days with 5 or 6 of them in the Arb. Now, numbers are down. There's no question about it. We used to have a spot in the in Upper Peninsula, just off of M123 headed north towards Whitefish Point, where we could take people to see nesting Connecticut warblers every year. And then the woods around that got cut, and they're gone. Now, last year, there was a spot that somebody found them not far from there. And so this year, we'll go check that out. But it's a hard bird to find. One of these days, I want to go check out a spot we went to back in, roughly 1988, 1989 in Wisconsin. Solon Spring, Wisconsin, which is in northwestern Wisconsin. And one morning, we had 35 singing male Connecticut warblers. Not only that, we saw them because they're singing at the top of jack pines, just like a Curlin's warbler. It's an area that has an industrial jack pine forest owned by Weyerhaeuser, and if they don't brush out the underbrush, they'll nest. So it's kind of wild. Oh, wait a minute. Mourning warbler. Mourning warbler is another late migrant, peak around the 23rd of May. So if you want mourning warbler has a wonderful, Connecticut warbler has a loud song that people, even with poor hearing, can usually hear. Same thing with mourning warbler. And they're very, very uncommon early in May, but get to the 20th to the 25th of May, and you can usually find them. And they nest all over the Upper Peninsula. So, common yellowthroat. Yeah, it's common. And you find them typically in wetlands or at field fringes. And they're a loud bird. You find them anywhere in the Arb. Once nesting season comes, you're more likely to find them in wetlands that have cattails. So, hooded warbler. Once again, going back to this time period, hooded warbler was pretty uncommon. It hadn't started its march north. Hooded warbler is one of those birds that has responded pretty well to climate change. As climate change has progressed, hooded warblers have moved north. Back in 1970s, 1980s, they were not nesting in Washtenaw County. They are. Now they're nesting. So they're a fairly early migrant. So you can see these earlier than the 15th of May. Wilson's warbler. Wilson's warbler is just cute. It's a small warbler. They're not as common in the east, actually, as they are in the western United States. They tend to be fairly late in migration. The midpoint's the 15th, but the peak is the 23rd. So once again, you can see them early, but you may see one. And if all you care about is seeing one, well, then you're done. I like to see a lot. I like to go out and just, I've had days in southern Michigan without just staying in the county. 28 species of warblers. It's like, yep, let's do it. Canada warbler? I'm always surprised. People get so excited about Canada warbler. And I'm going, okay. Because there were days when I would have 15, 20 of them along the river or just up in the valley. And they're actually a fairly loud singer. But if you're not out late enough in the season, you're not going to see them. And that's where the slides end. And other than that, I would be happy to talk to people about whatever you want to talk about. But one thing I do want to talk about, I'm just trying to get to the beginning of the, can I get to the beginning? Okay. let's go back to Schoolgirls Glen. Right now, Schoolgirls Glen is being threatened. The university wants to put in some sort of tram trolley thing that goes across the river. And I think you have to be worried about this for a lot of reasons. Well, you know, everybody poo-poos the university. Ann Arbor wouldn't be really much of anything without the university. So the university is really important. And I know a bunch of people here that have worked for the university, including myself. So we all ended up here because of the university. So when people say, oh, it's just another thing the university is doing to take over, well, yeah. But I'm not in favor of this. So Schoolgirls Glen up there, let me see if I can. So here's Schoolgirls Glen. So they want to have something come across the river here to go to North Campus. And I know Diane here would love to spend time talking to whoever wants to afterwards. So please feel free to do that. Now, if there are any questions about warblers or migration, I would love to take them. Oh.
Just a question about the bird breeding, the warblers breeding in the Arb.
Yeah.
I mean, yellows and yellow throats. And,
Yep.
But have you seen any other over the years?
You know, I think pine warblers breed there now. And it wouldn't surprise me if maybe chestnut-sided did as well. Yeah.
And then I like, you know, the trends, like with the hooded warbler
Yeah.
moving up. Have you seen some of those trends? Those are interesting to me. Like that, you see this bird like that suddenly is more prevalent, or
Yeah.
is disappearing.
So, like I said, one bird that's disappeared in the nesting season is golden wing warbler. That's moved further north, and it's a hard bird to find anywhere. I think that bird is on its way out, unfortunately, because it is just a delightful bird. But another bird that has moved north as a result of, I think, climate change is the blue grosbeak. They've been nesting now for a few years in the county, and I know that if I want to see a blue grosbeak, I know right where to go. And bang, there's a grosbeak.
Is it just one pair though?
No, I think there are multiple pairs. Yeah. So, yes.
My question is also about trends.
Yes.
So you've been watching in the yard for
Yeah.
a very long time. So what is your general observation overall of trends of bird populations? Not just species
Yeah.
specific, but
Yeah.
overall.
I think I think if I was to start bird watching today and I would talk to me, I would say, wow, that was amazing what you used to see. There aren't as many. You know, when it comes to a lot of birds, their numbers are down. Do you still see them? You do. The spruce budworm warblers, it was just maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I had 24 in one day in the Arb, whereas in the past my peak had been 20. So I say, well, yeah. But then the question is, does one day represent the species well? And that's why I think you need to have a long-term study. You need a 10-year study. Somebody that goes to the same spot, the same site, for 10 years on a regular basis in the spring or the fall. I tried doing it in the fall and I just didn't have as much time, so it never worked out. So, are all the same species here? They are. Are they here in the same numbers? They're not. So, numbers have dropped. We have a lot, climate change, pollution, cats. I'm sorry. When you read the statistic, cats kill 9 billion animals a year. Well, 3 billion, excuse me, I shouldn't exaggerate, 3 billion. 2 of those 3 billion are birds. Big birds, big birds, big skyscrapers. You can have a day where 100 birds hit a skyscraper, and it's not uncommon. But in the past, this happened with lighthouses. You don't think about it. So most of you have never heard of Bachman's warbler. I can remember back in the 1970s when somebody had a Bachman's warbler in Francis Marion State Forest, so South Carolina. I said, the next one that shows up, I'm going. Never happened. There wasn't a next one. 1898, Bachman's warbler, a lighthouse in the Florida Keys, one night, 28 males hit the lighthouse. It was a foggy night, lighthouse was going, birds go toward it, 28 birds gone. Bachman's warbler was a canebrake warbler. They nested in cane. With one thing they really clear out, cane. Cane gets cleared out everywhere. Now, we have another canebrake warbler, the Swainson's warbler. I know of only 2 people that have seen Swainson's warbler in Washtenaw County, me and Macklin Smith. But I had a graduate student who worked with Swainson's warblers in North Carolina. And I get a call from him and he goes, I need help. And I said, what? I need you to help me find more nests. And I'm going, oh no, I don't know about that. He said, but I'll be there. And I went out there. His study site was on a barrier island that was a national wildlife refuge, and it was closed during the nesting season. The only time it was open was for duck hunting. So his study area was closed to the public. Got in a boat. One morning, 22 singing Swainson's warblers. I'm the only person I know that has ever had a handful of baby Swainson's warblers. And most of his babies were eaten by black snakes. He had video that ran all night on the nest, so he watched the birds. He watched black snake come up, swallow the banded babies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No more, gone. So it's a bird that is still doing okay, but because of the snakes, is kind of tenuous. So there's all sorts of things. What you have to remember is, in the 1850s, there were no cardinals in Washtenaw County. That was a southern bird. They get up here. Turkey vulture. First turkey vulture in Canada, 1900. There's probably 100,000 pairs now, if not more. So birds have been moving north. Mourning warbler. There's another one. It wasn't here. Next bird that's going to be nesting in Michigan, black vulture.
Wow.
That one's on its way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's it.
Any more questions?
All right.
I would like to make a plug for Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance. We do ARB walks weekly, Thursdays, and then also starting some weekends here and there. I think we start late April. So if you want to come, late March, excuse
So
me.
it's like- It's usually
earlier.
like the last Thursday in March.
Earlier than I
It
can
runs
even
through May.
contemplate. So these are great opportunities if you would like to get out and get a sampling of what Michael's been speaking about.
So-
It's such a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And also we do the May count, which is one of the Saturdays early in May, where as an organization, we try to get a birder at every single spot in the county consistently. We're working on our own longitudinal study in
Yep.
Michael's footsteps here to make sure that we are continuing this data and of course tracking it in eBird. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to get out and learn your spring migrants if any of this was wonderful and inspiring today.
Good.
So
Okay,
yeah, thank you so much.
you're welcome. I hope
Really
you enjoyed
appreciate
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.